It comes down to the leadership, the culture that's been set up. So building the personal brands of your people matters because they become the ambassadors for the organization. What you have today is trust at an institutional level, at the lowest level in living memory. So people do not trust institutions anymore. Governments, religious organizations, educational institutions, everyone's been hit. So when the employees in this case become the ambassadors, the voice for the organization, they come across as trustworthy, where no spin doctor could ever do, because the robotic element of communication is gone and authentic communication is what takes over. Sometimes organizations are afraid with that. Maybe they'll say the wrong thing and so on. But the reality is that's what authenticity is all about.
Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of the Internal Marketing Podcast, the unique podcast series that flips the marketing conversation from external to internal by discussing everything you need to know about how to supercharge your marketing by engaging and empowering company employees to become powerful advocates of the company brand. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I'm happy that you've chosen to join me because I have another great episode lined up for you. In this episode, I'll be speaking with personal and business brand authority, coach, and author Jon Michail, and we'll be discussing why companies need to leverage the personal brands of their employees in a way that builds the company brand and drives growth. Yes, I know it's a very popular topic, but before we dive in, remember that leveraging the personal brands of your employees through a well-built employee advocacy program doesn't just happen overnight. It means that you need to be creating a stream of positive, engaging content to get them bought in and to encourage them to start sharing it. The best place to create that content is with Workshop. Workshop is an internal marketing platform for creating beautifully branded employee-specific campaigns. It replaces any internal email tool you have and integrates with the other communication channels that your team uses the most, including Slack, SharePoint, and Microsoft Teams. So, head on over to useworkshop.com/marketing to learn more and to download their complete guide to building an employee advocacy program for your company. Of course, Workshop is the global sponsor of Season 2 of the Internal Marketing Podcast. Thank you, Workshop. So now, without further ado, let's dive right into this discussion with Jon. And I'm so grateful to have you here, Jon. Hi, welcome to the Internal Marketing Podcast.
Good morning, Kerry-Ann, and thank you very much for the opportunity to be on your podcast. I look forward to sharing with you some gems with you today.
Absolutely. I know it's going to be an exciting discussion. When we were doing our little chat before we started to record here today, I was sharing with you that I came across a wonderful article that you'd recently done for Forbes. It's online, so anybody can look it up, and we'll certainly include the link to it in the show notes. And the title of the article was How to Leverage Your Employees' Personal Brands to Grow Your Business Equity. And why this article jumped out at me is because it's really a hot topic now on LinkedIn as far as I'm concerned, the whole matter of whether or not and how companies can be leveraging their employees' personal brand. I mean, we're going to get into all of that kind of stuff. We're going to dig in and find out why. Obviously, if we read the article, we know what your position is. I think it's a wonderful position. So you and I are already agreed. But why this topic I think is important for the Internal Marketing Podcast is because at the end of the day, the ultimate objective of internal marketing is to engage your employees in a way that turns them into advocates for the company brand. That's really the ultimate objective. And we have to acknowledge that for employees to do that, it really comes down to how they're leveraging their own personal brands. How are they building and growing and expanding their personal brands, and how the company brand can leverage the personal brands of those employees to do that. But I like to always start off with a nice level setting question, Jon, and that is specifically, I think we're clear on what the company brand is, but what really is a personal brand of an employee? When we say employees have personal brands, what is that exactly, and why should a company even care?
Let's look at it this way. A personal brand, for argument's sake, let's say we all have a personal brand. What we don't have, and it's most important, is we haven't got, in most cases, personal branding. So the brand is what you put out there. The branding is the activation. So your brand specifically without activation is passive. It's idle. It's just goes with the flow, and really it's not targeted. So from employees specifically, it's no one's fault here. We've been conditioned not to learn this from an early age. Because if you look at the whole industrial revolution and work, we get taught, go to school, be a good kid, get it educated, graduate, get married, have kids, and then you die. We don't get taught what are the things in between to maximize your value. And maximizing your value as a human being is what personal branding is all about. In the way I systemize it, it's your destiny. It's your opportunity to create whatever you choose. That's what personal branding is, without getting too airy-fairy. And we've proven that with thousands of case studies and, of course, many examples there that we haven't worked with, but are awesome examples of how personal branding works in the marketplace. And I'm sure you're going to probably ask me a question, who some of those people are. Personal branding is your insurance policy. COVID-19 has shown in the last 18 months, people without a personal brand or a personal brand position in the marketplace, in many cases, haven't got a job anymore. The ones that did and were recognized with their personal brand potentially have still got their job or even might have got a promotion in the last 18 months. So it's something that basically is your identity, your representation. And of course, if we look at it, your personal brand equals your reputation. So people that don't understand personal branding might have a different story around that. So hopefully I can make it even clearer with you. Did that explain that to you, Kerry-Ann?
I think so. I really think it hit at the heart of not only so much what practically a personal brand is, which, as you said, is your reputation, but it actually drives at the heart of helping folks to realize that your personal brand is almost like it determines your future, as you rightly pointed out. Especially when you talk about the events of the last 12 to 18 months and how things would have been flipped on its head. People who would have had very strong, powerful, effective personal brands actually probably stood a better chance of weathering the storms of what would have happened with industries and jobs and that sort of thing. I think it really is a great way to kick things off. And why would, I guess the next question is, well, from a company perspective, because I'm a company leader, I have employees working of me of whatever amount, whether it's 5, 10, 15 employees, or even a couple thousand. Why should I even care that I have employees with personal brands? Should I even care as a company?
Not every company will care. It comes down to the leadership, the culture that's been set up. And culture, as we know, Peter Drucker said a long time ago, culture eats everything else for breakfast every day of the week. So building the personal brands of your people matters because they become the ambassadors for the organization. What you have today is trust at an institutional level, at the lowest level in living memory. So people do not trust institutions anymore. Governments, religious organizations, educational institutions, everyone's been hit. So when the employees in this case become the ambassadors, the voice for the organization, they come across as trustworthy, where no spin doctor could ever do, because the robotic element of communication is gone and authentic communication is what takes over. Sometimes organizations are afraid with that. Maybe they'll say the wrong thing and so on. But the reality is that's what authenticity is all about. So you got to allow some vulnerability here. And as we know, if you're truly interested in making a difference out there and coming across as the authentic, you cannot cut out vulnerability as part of the communication. Because human beings that are in the now will say things at times that might go a little bit off center. And that's okay. Where the robotic spin doctor, he's a robot, right? He's a pod. Like, by the way, I'm saying this to you because I've been involved in that space for a long time as well. And it's not where my spirit lies anymore today. So the authenticity is the key here. That's why you would use your people. Of course, some training along the way and some coaching would help them because, of course, a lot of people, might be afraid to speak publicly. But I think from a social media perspective, and that's where you're going to an opportunity to leverage now the message, it's actually one of the best tools available.
I know you're preaching to the choir here because you and I obviously come from the same place, but what struck me with what you said a while ago was the word vulnerability. Because I think that strikes at the heart of a lot of the conversations that I've been seeing happening on social media and platforms like LinkedIn, where companies are literally afraid, or almost afraid of vulnerability in a sense, but there's a fear I'm picking up that companies, while they may intellectually recognize that yes, our employees would be great ambassadors for the brand, there's a fear of, leveraging employees' personal brands because there's a concern they're going to bring the company name into disrepute. They're going to put stuff out there that's going to maybe bring a lawsuit, that kind of thing. So I think there's probably, apart from maybe ignorance as to the benefits of it, there's also a fear that I think some companies have about allowing employees to really build and grow with their personal brands and also to have them become ambassadors. What's your word to companies who seem to be struggling with that fear, as I call it?
Yeah, the struggle is fair because we're entering a new paradigm. And as we know, people do not like change. A typical example is with a current corporation that I'm working with. Look, it comes down to the leadership and the culture that's been set up. So I can tell you, if it's a status quo culture, they don't want change. They are happy keeping the status quo. Don't worry, they'll put press releases out there that talk about diversity and talk about how they want to change the world, gender, race, etc. But behind the scenes, something else is going on. Those type of organizations, long term, will become dinosaurs, even if they've got the status quo today. Because why? Millennials, for instance, and new generations coming through aren't going to put up with that. Millennials have been conditioned, for instance, to have the freedom, do what they have to do. And of course, at times they cop the blame for being disloyal and so on. But hey, by the way, if millennials are disloyal, maybe it's us baby boomers that have conditioned them to be disloyal. Or maybe we were disloyal. Basically, I think what's important here is that I get some organizations will be more afraid. For instance, banks is a good example. Banks are very conservative by nature. That it's just about promoting the brand, and employees have to be in the background. But I think people are realizing this decentralized that we've entered, that human beings want something beyond their job now. And they want to put some of their personal side into the workplaces. And I think if it's handled properly, with some conditions, of course, the rules of the game, if I can use that term, it can be done very effectively. But you need courageous people. You need courage. You need courage at the top. And then if you're going to incorporate, depending which leader in your organization is going to be in charge of this. And by the way, HR is always not the best in this area. I can tell you this now. They've become at times the politically correct police that stops ideas from expanding. I'm talking about leaders here. Leaders that basically have had the embodiment of what it looks like to lead people. And at times you're going to make some mistakes. So I'm okay with all that. So that's what I would be recommending. Now, if you put a good plan together, you'll make it work. So the ones that really get this are already leveraging those opportunities, because it's not the company just speaking right now to the world. It's everyone in the company that potentially chooses to have a bit of a voice, but they just got to know also what's on and what's not on in reference to communicating. And that's fair enough. You need some guidelines. Otherwise, yes, you can hurt the brand if it's ad hoc.
Yes. I had a sidebar question just as a piggyback on your response just now. Do you think this strategy works more so for B2B companies, business to business, or business to consumer, any of those industries? Does it work better in one than the other, or can it be leveraged in both?
B2B is the obvious one, right? It's the obvious one. But it's just as effective for B2C as well, because we're talking about authenticity here. So even B2C, if you've got, the idea is if you've got a whole team and they're putting out messages targeted, I'm not talking about silly things that really bring the brand down. Why would you do that? You wouldn't even do that. I would not recommend that you do that personally, let alone from a corporate point of view. So why would you do that? And personal branding, just digressing for a second, is not about sharing with the world your dirty laundry. That a lot of people do on Facebook today. That actually will destroy your personal brand. Okay, that will destroy your personal brand. So that you could say, well, Jon, that's authentic. Yes, hold on a second, but you've got to have some street smartness in your life. You've got to have some street smarts there, that some things are only relevant privately. You don't go and share this with the world. It's just not relevant. And guess what? The world doesn't care. And I've had some clients that, probably younger clients, that might have done that. And then they use the term around transparency. We've got to be transparent. Well, that's fine. But if you study money and power on the planet, they're not that transparent. So you've got to have your own wits around what to put out there and what not. And that's authentic because you've made the conscious decision, and that's your human right to do that. You have choices. So from the point of view, it's certainly something that's going to add serious value to you. And the organization could also be a university. It could be a non-for-profit. It doesn't have to be just business, right across the board. But if you do this effectively, it'll pay in spades.
I am with you on that one. And I think that's a great clarifying point because, as you said, B2B is the obvious one, but it can certainly be leveraged in B2C and other industry types as well. Just going to the whole point of millennials, and I'm glad you raised it because in many different readings and case studies, we recognize that how millennials buy is quite different perhaps from prior generations. And one of the things that is most noteworthy about millennials is how heavily they rely on reviews, opinions, and input from other consumers that help to inform their own purchasing decisions. Now, I think that's one of the reasons why influencer marketing is such a huge deal, because brands have now taken and have for quite a number of years have taken on this thing of, okay, we're going to pay a popular personality, a celebrity, an influencer to inform and to promote our products. And hopefully through that, we can get some, great traffic going and get some sales. But again, going back to our discussion about employees, is that they actually can be the greatest influencers that can impact how your brand is perceived and how your brand grows and the sales you can get because...
And so much cheaper.
Oh yeah. The CFO would love to hear that. It's much cheaper. And it's also, going back to those words, it's more authentic, right? Because I work for the company. I'm not some paid celebrity who's just getting a nice fat check to say this brand is great. I work here. And I'm really honest to goodness believing that this company is great. Do you have examples? I'm sure you do. Examples of companies who are leveraging their employees' personal brands in this way. I think it's great to get some practical examples of companies who have seen the light from where we sit.
For sure. I'll give you the high-end ones because people will be able to relate with them instantly. But let's start off with Elon Musk. Elon Musk.
Yes.
Is the greatest anti-marketing marketeer in history.
I love that.
Yeah, Elon Musk is basically the personal brand of Tesla and, of course, SpaceX and so on. And he's the voice of the whole company. So he's a personal brand in himself, of course. I'm going to give you examples there where the leader is the personal brand. And of course, if the leader is a personal brand, then that's the perfect opportunity for team members then to become ambassadors of that brand. And like Tesla, of course, they've got a following that shakes markets. That's how powerful that personal brand is. Bezos from Amazon. He's the personal brand of Amazon. Okay, so there's another example. Richard Branson from Virgin. He's the crazy personal brand that everything he touches. And the interesting thing about personal branding is this. If you do it well, a la Richard Branson, at times, and you ever look at the media he gets from this, at times it's an insurance policy that the media actually gives him free kicks along the way, okay, because his personal brand has been so integrated with the business. And of course, then look at Oprah Winfrey and the O Network and what she's created. Amazing, extraordinary. And the funny thing about all these personal brand leaders that I've just mentioned, surprisingly, they're all billionaires.
Yes.
So they must be doing something properly. So that's why from now on, Kerry-Ann, anyone that doesn't understand this concept, we don't waste our time. I've been doing this for over 30 years. We've been doing personal branding before Google existed. Okay. So the concept works. But don't ever listen to people that have never done it. It's like life's too short. So I would, and I say this for everything, including mentoring, making money, whatever it is of interest to you, go and find masters in this space that already can show you the evidence base that this stuff works. Life's too short to waste time with what I'd call people that live in scarcity. This is abundance consciousness. This is growth thinking. If you're into status quo and keeping things the way they are, you're going to find a lot of butts in life. A lot of butts. The problem with a lot of butts in life is you end up with a big butt.
I love that one.
Okay. For me, and COVID's a great example of that. COVID has proven to us in the last 18 months that life is unpredictable. Your life right now is worth something. If you choose to create something extraordinary from this, go for it. It's your choice. And your personal brand is part of creating that destiny. I can't stress that enough. There's enough evidence of that today in the year 2021 that shows this is not even a conversation anymore. But of course, people, don't like change. They're stuck. They get caught up with their story. And I have empathy for them. Some of them are my beautiful clients. That was one of the reasons they came to see us in the first place. So I'm sure you, as a practitioner, if you communicate it effectively, and there's a lot of evidence, as I've said, it's everywhere, then it's very hard for somebody not to see the benefit of it. If their life is perfect, though, and this includes also including leaders and employees in a company that they feel everything's going well, then they don't want to be challenged. And maybe they're just comfortable doing what they're doing, and they might see this as a bit of a push. But as I've said before, we live in disruptive times, what I would call is creative disruptive times. You either have to get on board, like Darwin said, because this is part of the survival of the fittest, okay? Or you're going to get left behind. This is not a joke anymore. And of course, history shows that anyway, if you're aware to history. So just get on with it, create your destiny, because that's what you're designed to do, and not be there and just be complacent and hopefully count the hours every day until it's time to die. And that's what a lot of human beings do, am I right? You've seen this in the workplace, right? Okay. You've seen this in the workplace. So if you go into a workplace where what I'd call, and you see a lot of the walking dead, right? They're not going to get personal branding. Okay. They're going to also see, not only that, they're going to see you as a threat. And what they'll do as a threat is they'll find ways to try to sabotage you. Very common, right? They'll find, especially if they've been there 20 years plus or whatever, and they're part of the furniture. So what it means is if you're going to be working with companies as well, you got to pick the right companies. But it's more importantly, it's about the leaders. It's about your champions, because it's the champions that get it. Like everything, right? Everything in reference to culture and change management.
Absolutely. And I love those examples. Of course, when we talk about companies leveraging the personal brands of their employees, I think it definitely has to start with the CEO. Great example there. And of course, everybody can jump on board and do it. But speaking of starting with the CEO, and you spoke about the culture of an organization and so on, if there's anyone listening right now who is a part of the leadership of a company and they're saying, you know what, this sounds great. We really need to be moving towards a space of encouraging our employees to start building if they haven't started yet, or how to enhance or grow their own personal brands. But we recognize that it has to start with the leadership, as you said. And so a mindset shift would have to take place. And my next question is, what type of mindset shifts do you think would need to take place among the leadership hierarchy? And maybe how can we get that going? What conversations should we start to have as a company to start to see that thinking start to change, where we now begin to embrace this idea of everyone from the CEO right down having a personal brand and the company leveraging it for itself, but also the employees leveraging it for themselves as well?
Every company's got a different brief. But if I kept it from a simple perspective, what are some of the outcomes you're looking for, right? And let's be generic about that. Generally, if you're going to be building, let's say, a corporate brand, for argument's sake, the reason you do that ultimately, number one, is for revenue, sales. Yeah, ultimately. Reputation and so on all come with that. But in the end, if you're going to be spending billions of dollars, you got to get an X return on those billions of dollars. And normally you're going to do that through revenues and sales. But sales also means connections, okay? You can put that under, one big umbrella. Connections. And also in our model, and it's a pyramid model, before you launch your personal brand, though, you got to have your foundations right. If you haven't got your foundations right, eventually the bricks in the home, if they're not put together, the home eventually collapses. No different to personal brand as well. Okay, before you get into the promotion element, i.e. getting your brand out there, comes after the foundations, not before. So a lot of, clients might come to me and say, John, I want to get promoted out there, want fame, fortune, whatever. We won't do any of that until we get the foundations right. Because if you don't get the foundations right, everything will collapse eventually. It's the way it works. And then finally, we call that the cash in. The cash in. So the cash in is the end result. So it would be sales, it would be revenue. So some of your employees, by the way, when they learn personal branding, eventually might want to make more money. And you as an employer might say, oh, I don't like that idea. Well, get over that one, because when people are working in a win-win situation, you better share some of this wealth. If you're a leader listening, people will die for you when they trust the brand. And you'll see this with some of the companies I've mentioned. If you go and read their employee reviews, they'll actually say how much they love working in that culture. If the leadership supports it, miracles happen. Miracles actually happen. The magic happens when the leadership has got the courage to really lead and not just tick boxes.
Yes, indeed. And when you talk about leadership has to support it, do you believe companies should actually be playing a role in how they support their employees to build their personal brands? Like I know recently in my company, we actually did a personal branding workshop. We brought in an expert to come in and talk about how to set up your personal brand, etc. What role do you think companies should play in that space?
100%. Because first of all, let's be selfish about that. The company is going to benefit immediately. But what companies have to understand is this: when employees win first, the company will win. So if you're looking at investing, let's say in coaching, training, whatever in the organization, and you're looking always at the bottom line, how's the company going to win? You're looking at this at the wrong way. Make sure your people win first. If you're going to create a tribe, a community of trust, let them win. And that's, for me, that's an ultimate win-win. That then creates a triple bottom line for the employee, for the organization, create some guidelines of what would work, give people some freedom around that, and really put it into action. If you do it properly, if you do it systematically, 1+1, okay, it will work. Now, let's talk about that a little bit more. Look at LinkedIn as an example. LinkedIn is your best tool to build your personal brand right now, especially if you've got nothing else. Okay, and if you do that effectively, you'll get opportunities that I've already mentioned, including if you're as an employee, yes, you will get recruiters following you up. So potentially, if you're a leader of a company and you're listening to this right now, you're thinking, well, John, people will find my people and poach them away from the company. Well, guess what? That's actually a good thing. Why? Because if they are really good, they'll either stay with you or they'll leave and come back. Get some experience and come back, right? Because if you do worry about that, you're operating in scarcity as opposed to abundance. The difference is, and this is not airy-fairy, abundant thinkers or growth, okay, know that there's no limits. Scarcity has always got a story around what we can't do, okay? What we can't do. What I'm saying is, let's have a conversation about what we can do. And personal branding opens those opportunities in so many different ways, okay? If you do that systematically, not ad hoc, you need a plan and you've got to be very clear on the outcomes you're looking for, okay? Because that way you're going to get a return on investment as per your criteria that you've set up and the targets you're aiming for. So if you do it properly, you're cooking with gas. If you do it the other way, well, then you're going to be in trouble. And I would say, if personal branding gets a bad name, it's because people don't know how to do it properly.
Yes, Exactly. And I'm glad you raised a point about setting guidelines and having a plan in place, because those are some of the pitfalls I think a lot of companies need to look out for if they're going this route, or any individual employee who's looking to build or enhance their own personal brand. That's two of the definite pitfalls, because I think that a lot of people don't understand the how. And even if companies subscribe to the fact that, yes, we need to be leveraging and encouraging our employees to build their personal brands, we need to be comfortable with it and we need to leverage it. I think those are two great pitfalls that they need to look out for. And any other pitfalls? Because I mean, this all sounds great, yes, and I'm sure we still have some naysayer listeners who are like, okay, there must be some downside, there must be some pitfall that I need to look out for as a company to ultimately, I guess, protect our reputation and things like that. Any other pitfalls that you'd want to share before we wrap?
The pitfalls are obvious, but the pitfalls are not only in reference to personal branding, it's about anything that a company does. So, of course, part of what we offer as a company and have for 30 years is reputation management is part of what we incorporate in personal branding. And that means also crisis management as part of that, because, as I said, sometimes some things that might happen because it's actually beyond the power of the individual's personal brand. Something might happen in the company, and then somebody might comment, and before it's gone in a different skew. So there is pitfalls, and that's why I always say there's the rules of the game. Like every game that we play, it's got rules. It's got rules. So you need to know what they are. You don't have to always follow the rules, by the way, but at least you need to know what the rules are. And there's also at times unwritten rules. There's unwritten rules. Again, it's the leadership and the whole team around that you're going to be very clear what you're going to put as your manifesto of things that you can do and things that you can't. Okay?
No complaints over here. This has been such a great conversation, Jon, and I would like to know, just as a final takeaway for everything that you would have shared today and for those listening, what's the one key nugget that you would love our listeners to come away with today, having heard everything we would have shared?
So the key nugget is this. Your personal brand, like Bezos from Amazon said, is what people say about you when you're not in the room. That's actually your personal brand. So personal branding works best for people that want to create the destiny, free thinkers, entrepreneurs, change makers, and anyone that is scared to step out, but basically with a good system behind them, they'll be encouraged to actually learn new skills to maximize their value. So it's really, you're going to be ready for anything. But I suppose what your listeners to walk away with is this. Don't wait to build your personal brand, right, when you're in a crisis. Because if you do that, you'll be under stress. And then because I've had many clients like that over the years, and what will happen then is you're going to be operating with a desperate mindset in life. You never, ever want to be desperate.
That's right.
And that means in your personal and your business.
I am totally there with you.
Yeah, so that's what I want to leave everyone. Basically, create abundance for yourself. Personal branding will do that. And most importantly, you deserve it. You deserve to create your destiny through your personal brand. And any organization you work with, they will get the benefit of this. That's the beautiful thing about that. So everyone wins. Okay, everyone wins. And I can't stress that enough. So look, it's been awesome sharing this with you, Kerry-Ann, and your listeners. I hope I've delivered on some of those gems I've promised at the start. And I wish everybody a fantastic success and an abundant life moving forward.
Thank you so much, Jon. And I always like to end by asking my wonderful guests, how can we, the Internal Marketing Tribe, support you?
Sure. Thank you for that. Coming onto our website is a good example, imagegroup.com.au. And of course, ping me on LinkedIn. Join my LinkedIn connection. And that's under Jon Michail. And Jon Michail, by the way, for everyone out there, is spelled as Jon, and Michael is written as Michail, but it's spelled as Michil. So you can find me on LinkedIn, come on board, happy to support, vice versa. And that's what we do. It's all about creating a win-win collaboration, and basically it doesn't matter where you are in the world. Thank you to Zoom. We have many opportunities right now to create opportunities, and you're not stuck. It doesn't matter where you are right now. It's up to you. It's up to you. So thank you, and till next time, stay healthy.
And that's it for today's episode. I hope that you've gotten some valuable takeaways from today's discussion. And if you found it valuable, then please, I invite you as always to share it with someone who you believe will find it valuable as well. If you're not already subscribed to the Internal Marketing Podcast, please join the family. The podcast is available on your favorite podcasting app. Thank you again for listening. I'm your host, Kerry-Ann Stimson, and I look forward to your joining me next time.